Hey Leo, come sit with me for a bit because I just did a reading for you, and honestly, what came through is something I think a lot of us need to hear right now. We're going to talk about low energy today, and I know that might sound weird coming from me talking to LEOS of all people, but hear me out. This reading is about understanding that when your energy dips, when you feel like you're running on empty, that's not a sign that you're failing or that something is wrong with you. It's actually your system trying to tell you something really important. I pulled 6 cards for you today, and I'm getting this really clear message that your spirit guides, or the universe, or whatever you want to call it, is trying to help you reframe how you see these low energy moments. So let me share what came through because I think this is going to resonate with a lot of you. The first card that showed up is the Page of Swords. And when I saw this, I actually had to pause for a second because this card is all about mental energy and curiosity and that quick thinking vibe that you Leos usually have in abundance. But here's what I'm seeing with this card in this particular reading. The Page of Swords is showing up to tell you that your mind has been working overtime. Like I'm talking about the kind of mental activity that happens even when you think you're resting. You know those moments when you're lying in bed, but your brain is still planning, still strategizing, still trying to figure out 10 different things at once. That's what this card is highlighting. What's interesting about the Page of Swords here is that this energy is usually seen as positive, right? It's about being sharp and alert and ready to take on challenges. But the message I'm getting is that you've been in this state for so long that you don't even realize how much it's been draining you. Your mind has been like a computer with 50 tabs open. And even though you're not actively working on all of them, they're still running in the background and consuming your energy. The Page of Swords is pointing out that what you've been calling low energy might actually be mental exhaustion dressed up as physical tiredness. And here's the thing that I think is really important to understand. This card isn't showing up to criticize you. It's showing up to validate what you've been experiencing. Your energy feels low because you've been using it constantly, even in ways you haven't been fully aware of. Every time you second-guess yourself, every time you mentally rehearse a conversation, every time you run through all the possible outcomes of a situation, that's the Page of Swords energy at work. And while that mental agility is definitely one of your strengths, the cards are saying that you need to recognize when it's become a habit that's depleting you rather than serving you. I'm also seeing with this card that there's been a lot of information coming at you lately. Not just external information, but internal information too. Your intuition has been trying to communicate with you, your body has been sending you signals, and your emotions have been asking for attention. The Page of Swords represents that messenger energy. But when there are too many messages and you're trying to process all of them at once, that's when the system starts to overload. The low energy you're feeling is actually your mind's way of saying, hey, we need to slow down the input for a while so we can actually process what we already have. Now the second card that came out is the Ten of Swords, and I know this card can look pretty intense when you see it in a deck, because the imagery is usually quite dramatic, but I want you to stay with me here, because this card is actually bringing a message of relief. Believe it or not. The Ten of Swords represents an ending, and specifically it represents the kind of ending where you've been pushing through something until you absolutely cannot push anymore. It's that moment of complete mental or physical exhaustion where your body or your mind just says, nope, we're done. We cannot go any further like this. What I'm seeing with this card in your reading is that the low energy you've been experiencing is actually the Ten of Swords moment playing out in your life. And I know that might sound scary, but here's why it's actually a good thing. The Ten of Swords marks the end of a cycle of struggle. It's the card that shows up when you've been fighting against something for so long that the universe finally steps in and forces you to stop. That low energy isn't random and it's not a punishment. It's literally your system shutting down the old way of operating because it cannot continue anymore. Think about it like this. You know how sometimes your phone will go into low battery mode and it'll shut down certain functions to preserve the essential operations? That's what your energy system is doing right now. The Ten of Swords is showing me that you've been running on adrenaline and willpower for longer than is sustainable, and your body has finally said, okay, we're going into conservation mode now whether you like it or not. And I'm getting the sense that for a lot of you watching this, you've been interpreting this as failure or weakness, but it's actually the opposite. It's your system being smart enough to protect you from complete burnout. The Ten of Swords also brings this message about mental patterns that need to die off. I'm seeing that you've been carrying certain thoughts and beliefs about what you should be capable of, about how much energy you should have, about what productivity is supposed to look like. And these beliefs have been like swords in your back, constantly creating this internal pressure and criticism. The low energy is forcing you to let these old mental patterns die because they're simply not serving you anymore. You can't think your way into having more energy. You can't force your way through this. The Ten of Swords is saying that this ending needed to happen so that something new can begin. What's also coming through with this card is that there's a kind of liberation that happens when you finally stop fighting. When you accept that you're in a low energy phase and you stop judging yourself for it, there's this release that happens. The Ten of Swords might look like defeat in the traditional sense, but spiritually, it represents the freedom that comes when you finally put down the battle. You don't have to keep proving yourself. You don't have to keep pushing through. You're allowed to just be in this lower energy state without making it mean something terrible about who you are. The third card here is the Six of Wands. And this one is really interesting in the context of this reading, because the Six of Wands is typically about victory and recognition and that triumphant energy. But what I'm seeing here is a different angle on this card. The Six of Wands is showing up to remind you of who you are underneath the exhaustion. It's like the cards are saying, yes, you're experiencing low energy right now, but that doesn't erase all the things you've accomplished and all the strength you've demonstrated up until this point. I think what's happening for a lot of Leos right now is that when your energy drops, you start questioning everything. You start wondering if you've lost your edge, if you're not the person you used to be, if somehow you failed at being the confident and energetic Leo that everyone expects you to be. The Six of Wands is showing up to tell you that your worth and your identity are not dependent on your energy levels. You are still that person who has overcome challenges. You are still that person who has achieved things. You are still that person who has the capacity for greatness. The low energy is just a temporary state, not a permanent identity. What I'm also getting with this card is that you need to redefine what victory looks like right now. In a high energy phase, victory might mean accomplishing a bunch of things, being super social, taking on new projects, and being visible in all these different ways. But in a low energy phase, victory looks different. Victory might mean that you actually listened to your body and rested when you needed to. Victory might mean that you said no to something that would have drained you further. Victory might mean that you're being honest about your limitations instead of pretending to be fine when you're not. The Six of Wands in this reading is asking you to give yourself recognition for managing this low energy phase with wisdom rather than beating yourself up for being in it. Can you celebrate the fact that you're learning to honor your energy instead of override it? Can you acknowledge that it takes courage to slow down in a world that constantly tells us to speed up? That's the kind of victory this card is pointing toward. It's not about external achievements right now. It's about internal shifts in how you relate to yourself and your energy. I'm also seeing with this card that your low energy period is actually going to lead to a different kind of success down the road. The Six of Wands is about recognition, and what's coming through is that by learning to work with your energy cycles instead of against them, you're going to develop a kind of wisdom and resilience that will actually make you more effective in the long run. People are going to notice that you have staying power. They're going to notice that you don't burn out the way other people do. They're going to notice that you have this sustainable approach to your goals and your life, but that only happens if you honor this low energy phase as part of your growth, rather than seeing it as an obstacle to push through. Now, the fourth card is the Nine of Wands, and when I pulled this, I felt this deep sense of fatigue that I think a lot of you are experiencing. The Nine of Wands is the card of the wounded warrior, the person who has been through battles and is still standing, but barely. This card validates everything you've been feeling. You're tired because you've been through a lot. You've been defending yourself, protecting your energy, trying to maintain your boundaries, and it's been exhausting. What I'm seeing with the Nine of Wands is that you've been in survival mode for a while now. And survival mode is incredibly draining because you're constantly on alert, constantly watching for the next challenge or threat or demand on your energy. The Nine of Wands shows someone who has been through 8 previous battles and is preparing for a 9th one. And I think that's exactly how you've been feeling. Like, you finally get through one thing and then something else comes up, and you're wondering when you're going to get a break from all of this. The message that's coming through with this card is that the low energy is your body's way of trying to get you out of survival mode. When you're running on fumes, you can't stay in that hyper-vigilant state anymore. Your system forces you to slow down, to lower your defenses a little bit, to stop being ready for battle every single second. And I know that can feel vulnerable and scary, especially if you're used to being strong and capable and always ready to handle whatever comes your way. But the Nine of Wands is saying that you need this forced rest period to actually heal from everything you've been through. What's also interesting about this card is that it represents resilience, but it's asking you to think about resilience in a new way. Real resilience isn't about never getting tired. Real resilience isn't about always bouncing back immediately. Real resilience includes the wisdom to know when you need to step back and recover. The Nine of Wands person is still standing, but they're leaning on their wand for support. They're acknowledging that they need help staying upright. And that's not weakness. That's actually what allows them to keep going in a sustainable way. I'm getting the sense that some of you have been feeling like you should be over this by now, like you should have recovered faster, or you should have more energy than you do. The Nine of Wands is saying to let go of that timeline. You've been through more than you probably give yourself credit for, and healing doesn't happen on a schedule. The low energy is showing you that you need more time and more gentleness with yourself than you thought. And that's okay. That doesn't mean you're broken or weak. It means you're human, and you've been through some real challenges. The 5th card that showed up is the Seven of Swords, and this one is really fascinating in this context. The Seven of Swords is often about strategy, and sometimes about being sneaky or trying to get away with something. But what I'm seeing in this reading is that this card is highlighting the ways you've been trying to outsmart your low energy or work around it, instead of actually addressing it. Have you been trying to hack your way into having more energy? Have you been looking for shortcuts or quick fixes? Have you been telling yourself that if you just change your diet or your sleep schedule or your routine in some specific way, then you'll suddenly have all your energy back? The Seven of Swords is coming up to show you that while strategy and planning definitely have their place, you can't strategize your way out of a genuine need for rest and recovery. I'm seeing that some of you have been trying to steal energy from your future self, if that makes sense. Like borrowing against tomorrow's energy to get through today. Telling yourself you'll rest later, you'll slow down later, you'll take care of yourself later. But later keeps not coming, and the debt keeps accumulating. What this card is really highlighting is that there's a part of you that doesn't trust the process of simply resting and allowing your energy to naturally restore itself. There's a part of you that wants to control it, to make it happen faster, to find the secret formula that will bypass this low energy phase. The Seven of Swords is asking you to be honest with yourself about whether your attempts to manage your energy are actually serving you, or whether they're just another form of not accepting where you are right now. I'm also seeing with this card that you might be sneaking around your own boundaries in subtle ways. Like maybe you've told yourself you're going to rest, but then you're still checking your phone constantly, or you're still mentally working through problems, or you're still making yourself available to everyone who needs you. The Seven of Swords is pointing out these ways that you're not being fully honest with yourself about what rest actually requires. Real rest means actually disconnecting, actually letting go, actually trusting that things will be okay even if you're not actively managing everything. The message here is to be more straightforward with yourself and with others about what you need. Instead of trying to find clever ways to keep going despite your low energy, what if you just acknowledged that you're in a low energy phase and you need to adjust your life accordingly? The Seven of Swords is asking you to stop trying to trick yourself into having more energy and instead get real about working with what you actually have right now. The sixth and final card is the Wheel of Fortune, and I have to say this card feels like such a perfect way to close out this reading. The Wheel of Fortune is all about cycles and change, and the understanding that everything moves through different phases. High energy, low energy, high energy, low energy. This is natural. This is how life works. This is how your body works. This is how your spirit works. What the Wheel of Fortune is emphasizing in this reading is that your low energy is not a permanent state. It's a phase on the wheel. And just like the wheel keeps turning, your energy will shift and change and eventually increase again. But here's the key insight that's coming through with this card. The wheel turns in its own time. You can't force it to turn faster. You can't skip phases. You can't jump from the bottom of the wheel to the top without going through the natural progression. I'm seeing that the Wheel of Fortune wants you to understand that low energy serves a purpose in the bigger cycle of your life. When you're in a high energy phase, you're out in the world, you're taking action, you're creating and building and doing. But you can't stay in that energy indefinitely. At some point, the wheel turns and you move into a lower energy phase where the work is internal rather than external. This is when integration happens. This is when you process everything you experience during the high energy phase. This is when your body repairs and your nervous system recalibrates and your spirit gets a chance to catch up with everything your mind and body have been doing. The Wheel of Fortune is also bringing this message about trust. You have to trust that the wheel will turn, that this low energy phase will eventually give way to a higher energy phase. But that only happens if you actually allow yourself to be in the low energy phase fully instead of fighting it the whole time. If you spend your entire low energy phase trying to force yourself back into high energy, you're essentially trying to stop the wheel from turning naturally, and that creates so much unnecessary struggle. What's really beautiful about this card in this position is that it's reminding you that you've been through these cycles before. You've had low energy periods in the past, and they didn't last forever, did they? You came back to yourself. Your energy returned. Your vitality came back. The Wheel of Fortune is asking you to remember that and to have faith in the process. This is not the first time the wheel has turned in your life, and it won't be the last. These cycles are part of being alive. I'm also getting with this card that there's a spiritual timing element to all of this. The universe or your higher self or whatever you believe in has perfect timing for when your energy needs to be high and when it needs to be low. Sometimes low energy is protecting you from something. Sometimes it's redirecting you. Sometimes it's just giving you a necessary break that you wouldn't have given yourself otherwise. The Wheel of Fortune is saying to consider that maybe this low energy phase is exactly what's supposed to be happening right now, not as a punishment, but as part of a larger plan for your growth and well-being. So here's what I'm taking away from this reading for you, Leos. Your low energy is not your enemy. It's not a sign that something is wrong with you or that you've lost your spark or that you're not the person you used to be. It's a messenger. It's telling you that you've been running your mental energy too hard for too long. It's showing you that an old way of operating has reached its completion point. It's reminding you that your worth is not measured by your productivity. It's revealing where you've been in survival mode and need to shift back into thriving mode. It's highlighting where you've been trying to outsmart your own needs instead of honoring them. And it's asking you to trust the natural cycles of energy that are part of being human. The cards are being so clear that this low energy phase is temporary, but it's also necessary. It's part of your growth. It's teaching you things about yourself and about sustainable success that you could only learn by going through this. And when your energy does return, and it will, you're going to have a completely different relationship with it. You're going to know how to recognize when you're depleting yourself. You're going to be better at honoring your boundaries. You're going to understand that rest is productive. You're going to trust your cycles instead of fighting them. Can you give yourself permission to be exactly where you are right now? Can you stop treating your low energy like a problem to solve and start treating it like information to receive? Can you trust that the wheel is turning even when you can't see the movement yet? I hope this reading gave you some new perspective on what you're experiencing. Let me know in the comments if this resonated with you or if you've been going through a similar low energy phase. Sometimes it just helps to know we're not alone in this, you know?